Was during the peak of the pandemic in March. Last week, the region's weekly tally exceeded 300,000 patients, with Spain and France recording the worst results. The UK is on track to follow the continent into a disastrous second wave, and its testing system too is not coping.
I've been trying online every hour, on the hour, for 4 days, and I finally got an appointment last night.
The British government's now banned socialising for 2 million people in 7 areas in the northeast of England, where the case numbers are 3 times the national average.
We agree with the local councils that we must follow the data and act, and the data says that we must act now.
Introducing a second national lockdown would be devastating for the UK economy that's already in recession. And Boris Johnson says he just won't do it. Instead, the British government is putting the onus back on the people with a message: if they want to save Christmas, they need to stick to the rules. There's not long left to turn things around. Samantha Hawley, ABC News, London.
Well, like London, in Germany, the daily number of new cases is continuing to rise. Deutsche Welle correspondent Clifford Coonan joins us now from Berlin. Clifford, good evening to you. What are things like on the ground there in Germany?
Well, I think the situation is worsening slightly. At the same time, there's kind of a note of cautious optimism. There is sort of, in the Northern Hemisphere generally, it's a bit like Game of Thrones, everyone's saying winter is coming. But at the same time, along with the calls for vigilance, there's also a feeling that we are coming out of it. I mean, while the numbers have increased, a lot of that is put down to the fact that there's more testing going on. So while this vigilance is there, but at the same time, I think there's a feeling that it's not as bad. So it's not all grim here. Right.
So there has been a rise in the number of cases like they're seen across Europe. But is it perhaps the case then that authorities feel they're more in control this second time round?
I think it is, and they have to be very careful because they don't want people to just relax. So a lot of it is, they're really urging this vigilance. But at the same time, the age profile of people getting the virus is much lower. The average age of people who died in Germany, for example, was 81. So they're very focused now on protecting elderly and other at-risk groups, such as people with pre-existing conditions. And then also they're noticing that with more testing, that the death rate is much lower than it was. So the general message is, as I say, cautiously optimistic, but at the same time, I think people are just afraid that the authorities are afraid that people will get too relaxed and just suddenly start ignoring social distancing, stop wearing the masks. We had an interview with our top virologist yesterday, and he was saying that we're going to be wearing masks for some time, even after vaccines are introduced, because the vaccines are not going to be fully available until the end of next year even. So it's kind of a mixed picture, but still quite optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump, I'm sure you'll know, is in America is talking about the possibility of a vaccine in a couple of months, possibly electioneering in other countries, the UK certainly, and here in Australia, thinking it could be towards the end of next year. How much talk of a vaccine is there in Germany?
Yeah, they're talking about several vaccines becoming available, but that the focus initially will be on those at-risk groups. The reaction here in general to coronavirus has been quite measured, and I think that's recognised among the population. We did have these demonstrations against the lockdown, as you'll have seen, but generally I think most people are actually, in a survey we had at Deutsche Welle, we found that most people were proud of the reaction to it. So I think that there is a feeling that when vaccines come, that they'll go initially to these at-risk groups, but thereafter the focus will be on, we'll still be wearing the mask for some time to come.
Clifford, are the borders to Germany open?
They are. Some borders are open. One of the reasons we had a spike was that there were people coming back from holiday, because a lot of people were going to places like Greece and Spain, and so when they were coming back, we saw a spike in coronaviruses there. But they were also testing everyone at the airports. So the borders are open, but they're closed to a lot of places still, and there's only a few countries there's only a relatively small number of countries that are still on the list.
Interesting. Deutsche Welle correspondent Clifford Coonan, thank you. Let's take a look at some sport this Friday night, shall we? American golfer